Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Patricia Gagnon, and I am the Chief Experience Officer for Intellispark. I'm joining you today from very chilly Arlington, Virginia. The topic for today's discussion is check the pulse. Let's make sure our students are thriving. With one semester almost completed in this school year, you are probably ready for a holiday break and for a little refresh so that you can come back to give your students your very best in the new year. You've undoubtedly been supporting your students through a wide array of challenges already this year, and it may be tempting to question whether your students are headed in the right direction, whether academically, behaviorally, or from a well-being perspective. Are things trending better or worse than usual at this point in the year? This may be difficult to tell as you are so deeply immersed in the day-to-day realities of your students' lives. This is why we are presenting this webinar today with a partner who brings tremendous perspective to this topic. And as I was thinking about this discussion today, I really thought perspective is a big topic. Phyllis works with students every day as a school counselor and family therapist. Like you, she is committed to supporting students, families, and educators through meaty challenges today so that students can thrive in years to come when they may not be surrounded daily by such an all-embracing team. Okay, moving on. The format of today's discussion will be first, some background on Phyllis and the work that she does supporting students, families, and educators. Then we'll proceed with a poll to assess how this group, you, think students are doing on various metrics relative to 10 or 20 years ago, more like 5 to 10 years ago. Phyllis will then share her perspective of what she is seeing on the ground and what seems to be working. During this discussion, we ask that you share your own challenges, whether in the chat or in the Q&A, as Phyllis wants to be sure you come away from this webinar with strategies to address the challenges you see your students facing today. We'll be sharing some of Phyllis's favorite strategies, but we may be sharing some additional ones if you have some challenges for her, some questions for her. As Phyllis says, we want to address the challenges and questions of the people on this webinar, not all the problems of society. So please share your questions with us, as I said, either in the chat or in the Q&A. We are recording this webinar and we will make it available online in case you would like to revisit the discussion or share it with a colleague. Be on the lookout for an email from us in the coming days. This will include a link to the recording, a handful of slides, and information on how to learn more about Intellispark or to connect with Phyllis and learn more about her publications and latest solutions. She has one she'll be talking about a little bit later in the call. Okay, now on to introductions. Phyllis is a licensed clinical professional counselor. She is a therapist working with kids and families in private practice at the Chrysalis Group. She's a consulting counselor at the Landon School in Bethesda, Maryland, and she's a journalist. She's very busy. She is the author of Middle School Matters, Middle School Superpowers, and The Wonder Box. And I just want to say I still reference these books. If you've attended these webinars before and you've met Phyllis, you may have seen these books. I tell you, they're like Bibles for me, right up on the shelf there, and I refer to it as I have a 10-year-old daughter. Phyllis is also co-founder of the Social Playbook app. This is a new app she'll talk about a little bit later. As a journalist, she freelances for publications including The Washington Post, CNN, Working Mother, U.S. News and World Report, and Your Teen. And her ideas have been shared in outlets including The New York Times, The Atlantic, The New Yorker, Edutopia, sorry, Mindshift, and NPR. Phyllis, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm very excited for our audience to hear what you've gathered about the state of students today relative to what our perceptions may be. I'm also excited for you to share what the anecdata seem to be saying about which efforts educators undertake that do, in fact, seem to be helping students thrive. As our time with students day to day is so precious, it's very helpful to know which of our best efforts are worth the lift, as we just can't do it all despite the best intentions. So, to kick us off, we are going to do a poll to do some level setting around this question. Are today's kids really doing worse than in years past? For each statement that you will see on the screen, we'd like you to decide whether today's rate in 2025 is higher or lower than it was in the earlier years. We'll be providing the actual rates based on the CDC's Youth Risk Behavior Survey, Monitoring the Future, or unrelated national data sets. Okay, so everybody get ready. We are looking for your participation. We will not give an answer until we've seen enough of you share your thoughts on how students are doing today. Okay, so the first question is related to school connectedness. Here's the question. Is the percentage of students who feel connected to people at their school higher or lower today than in 2011? And we can't see who's saying what, so it's okay. You don't have to be right. Okay, we haven't seen a lot of movement, so I'm going to stop right there. And we have 73% saying lower, 27% saying higher. Okay, so Phyllis.
So actually, this is one area where things seem to be improving. The rates today are 61% versus 46% in 2011. So that's some good news there.
That is some good news. Okay, thank you. All right, the next poll is related to current teen vaping use. Okay, let's see. Okay, and here we go. Can we see this? Do you see that?
I don't see it yet. No.
Oh, let's see. Okay. Oh, it's not letting me pull this. Hmm. Okay.
Maybe saved by the bell.
Oh dear. Let's see. Okay, well, I may allow. Okay, here we go. Huh? Here we go. Okay, is the percentage of students who currently use e-cigarettes vaped in the past 30 days higher or lower today than in 2019? Okay, it looks like we have our 15. Okay, and 73% say higher, 27% say lower. Okay, and Phyllis?
This is actually one I got wrong too. The answer is that they are substantially lower now than they were in 2019. So 7.8% versus 27.5%. And it's just a major decline. That might have something to do with social shifts after the pandemic as well.
Okay, thank you, Phyllis. That was surprising to me as well. Okay. All right. Next up, uh, let's see. Teen pregnancy rate. Okay. Here is the question. Is the percentage of students who national teen birth rate per thousand females higher or lower today than in 1991? Okay. And we have 79% who say lower, 21% who say higher. And Phyllis? Oh, 80% and 20%. Okay, there we go.
The majority is right. Teen births have dropped almost 80% since the 1990s. The actual rates are 13.5% today versus 61.8% in 1991. I will point out that there is a hidden downside to this rate. Obviously, it's good that we have fewer teen pregnancies occurring. However, part of that I think is because kids are dating less and they're less independent, and there are other reasons for those numbers to be dropping.
Hmm. Interesting. Okay. All right. The next question is physical fighting at school. And here is the question. Is the percentage of students who were in a physical fight on school property in the past year higher or lower today than in 1993? Okay. Everyone was chiming in on that one quickly. Okay. It's still moving. We have more people who have a thought on this one. Clearly, we know where you're spending time. Okay. Phyllis, what do we have to say?
What was the answers from the group?
It says 65% say lower, and 35% say higher.
So that's really interesting. They're lower. That the actual rates are very low. They're 7% versus 16% in 1993. I think this is another question where what we're seeing is that kids are spending so much more time online, so they're fighting less in person. So, good news and bad news embedded in that one.
So maybe they're taking um, their antagonism to another place.
Maybe.
Okay. All right. The next question is bullying at school. Kind of a natural follow-on to that last question. Is the percentage of students who were bullied at school in the past year higher or lower today than in 2009? This one seems to be moving very closely. Okay, and so right now it appears that we have 56% say higher and 44% say lower.
So when I answered this question myself, I got it partially right and partially wrong. I thought that the rates had dropped at school, but I thought that they had dropped because they had gotten there's more bullying online. That was my guess. But
Mhm.
actually, the in-person rates were 15% now versus 28% in 2009. So they've gone down quite a bit. But also, online bullying rates have declined as well since the 2000s.
Wow. 2009 or like early 2000s
Early
or
2000s.
okay. Okay. All right. All right. Let us go back to teen traffic fatalities. Oh, I need to go back for a second and another one. Hold on one second. Uh, oh, I think I made the same mistake as I made before.
I think maybe you just need to close out the one that's up there now.
Yes, I do. I can't, I'm not seeing it. So hold on. Okay, sorry about that. Uh, teen traffic fatalities. Is the percentage of students involved in teen drivers as the share of all U.S. traffic health higher or lower today than in 2003? Definitely have a lot of people saying lower. Okay, and still saying lower. Okay. Whoop. 75-25. 75% say lower, 25% say higher. Phyllis?
They are lower, partially due to safer cars. And while there's no downside to fewer fatalities, I will say that chunk of this, I'm sure, is related to the fact that kids are delaying getting driver's license, similar
Hmm.
to that teen pregnancy statistic.
Hmm. Hmm. So we're delaying on quite a few things, probably many of which we don't mind, but it does impact our lives as well.
Yes.
Okay. Next up, cheating in school. Okay. Is the percentage of students who admit to cheating on a test in the past year higher or lower today than in 2002, who admit to cheating on a test? Okay. This is interesting. Okay, higher. 80% say it is the percentage higher, and 81% and 19% say lower.
So I also had guessed higher. Uh, I'm seeing so much more discussion of cheating even among students. They will more openly admit it than they have in the past. But when you look at the statistics in the research, it's actually declining. It was 74% in 2002 versus 59% more recently, at least for admitting. I suspect if you looked at the actual rates, maybe more kids are getting away with it because there are so many more creative ways to cheat. But it's interesting to me that the numbers have gone down. I was not expecting that.
Hmm. Although it's still 59% is still pretty high.
Pretty
And of
high.
course, this is data probably doesn't include AI, so we'll see how that changes things here.
Definitely.
Um, okay. We've got a few more here, and then we're going to dive into some content. Okay, so the next question is on parental monitoring. Is the percentage of students who say their parents know where they are and who they're with higher or lower today than in 2003? This group is pretty accurate on this one, I think. Okay, and the result we have is 87% say higher and 13% say lower.
So not only are they right, they actually guessed the exact percentage at the same rate. So the same percentage of people who thought it was higher is the percentage of parents who are monitoring this information in their kids now versus 78%. So 86% now versus 78% in 2003. There's more oversight. I think this is why we have terms like helicopter, snowplow, parent. And of course, while it's good that parents know where their kids are and who they're with, that's important. We also want to make sure that we are helping kids develop that independence. They need to do things like get a driver's license or eventually go on a date. So,
Or we'll be parenting for a lot longer.
yes,
Okay.
yes. Hard sometimes to take the long view.
Yes. Okay. Next question is around teen volunteering. And I think actually part of it might have gotten rolled into that last survey. So, yeah, I think it was tucked into here. The percentage of teens who are volunteering, some people may have answered this or not, but the question was, what is your guess at what percentage of teens are volunteering? And I'm going to let Phyllis, you go right for the actual on that. This said 40% here, but again, we may not have gotten everyone there.
That's a pretty good guess. It's actually 28 to 30% of teens participate in community service each year, which is either steady or slightly higher than 20 years ago. So we sometimes malign kids as being so self-centered, but actually the rates of volunteering, if anything, are going up.
And there's definitely been a very big focus on this, so it's paying off, I think.
Yes, and some kids need to do it to graduate.
Exactly. I'm sure that is
There's,
having an
there's some
influence.
self-interest there. Yeah.
Yes, yes. Okay, we have two more questions. One is on emotional support. Oh, let's see. Why did I close out that last one? Stop sharing it. Go back. Okay. Is the percentage of students who usually or always get the social emotional support they need higher or lower today than in 2011? Okay. I'm going to stop it right there. Oh, we got one more in there. Okay. And 67% say higher today and 33% say lower. And Phyllis.
So it's actually really close, 58% today versus 49% in 2011. So slightly improved connectedness to caring adults, with the exception for marginalized group who still struggle to find that connection to an adult.
Mm, hmm. Okay, that's interesting. Um, Especially with the focus, it would seem that we're trying to bring marginalized groups in more, but that's
Still falling a little short there.
yeah. Okay. And the last question, reading for fun. Is the percentage of students who read for fun almost every day, 13 years and older, higher or lower today than in 1984? Okay, I'm going to end the poll there, share the results, and we have 69% who say lower and 31% who say higher. Phyllis?
Yeah, this is in this area, reading for fun is down sharply. It's 14% versus 35% in 1984.
Mhm.
I was talking to a colleague, a counseling colleague who does college interviews, and he, as one of the questions that's scripted by the university that he does the interviewing for, had him ask the applicants to talk about a book that made a difference in their life or a favorite book. And so far, no one that he's interviewed has been able to name any book at all. They haven't read one. In fact, one student told him, "I've never read an entire book." And there was no shame around it. And these were really high achieving kids. So I think some of it is the distractions and the other opportunities. And some of it is maybe we need to think about the messaging and how much import we put on reading for pleasure and emphasize that for kids.
Well, I think that's amazing, the fact that it doesn't even seem to matter. They
Yeah, no
that
self-consciousness around it. That was so surprising to me.
wow. Wow. Well, I'm just curious if people would put in the box, any surprises here? Any big surprises? And to what might you ascribe anything that surprised you? Any thoughts? Feel free to put that in the chat. Um, and feel free to put things in the chat as we go. So, my first question, oh, the reading one is very surprising and I agree. Could not agree more, Megan. Um, But yes, surprisingly more positive data points than you may have expected. Which leads me to ask Phyllis kind of the first question here is why do we tend to think the sky is falling? What is happening here that we are programmed to think, it's always worse. Things are just getting worse all the time.
So there are a lot of reasons for it. One is that we have a negativity bias as humans. We pay more attention to bad news than good news. Another reason is called declinism, which is that every generation thinks that, kids today are worse in XYZ areas than they were when we were growing up. There's the availability heuristic, which is this idea that when you have dramatic events, everybody, big articles on cheating or using AI, those stick in our minds more. So it makes them feel more common than they actually are. And then there's the media that amplifies the stories that get the clicks. And so you may actually be seeing the same isolated incident over and over, and it starts to feel like it's more prevalent than it actually is.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Which again, people aren't helping the case when they dwell on
No.
the negative.
Mm-mm.
Yeah. Um, and so Phyllis, and again, for people who aren't familiar with Phyllis, she works with, in addition to her private practice and serving as an adjunct counselor at a school in Bethesda, Maryland, she consults with schools all across the country. And so, Phyllis, I'm curious to hear from you. What are you seeing on the ground as you're working with schools that seems to be working? What should people continue doing?
So I think, there's some data out there that is actually pointing to what's working. And one of the things that's working really well is that in schools where they have social emotional wellness programs, where they're actually teaching kids the tools that they need to cope with difficult things and they're investing in wellness, they have an 11% gain in academic performance, not to mention they're more adept at using the coping skills that they're taught. Uh, for kids who are in schools that have mentoring or peer buddy programs, they have lower absenteeism, they have a greater sense of belonging. If there's a school-based mental health team on hand, that's associated with faster recovery from stress and also improved retention when you're looking at independent schools. There's also some research showing, and this is emerging research, that when students are given temporary leaves of absence for substance use or for mental health recovery, they actually integrate better and they have fewer relapses on the other end when they come back. And so, uh, really keeping in mind that whole child and that wellness piece actually is win-win. And then the last thing I would say that we're seeing some research on is that, and this one's more nuanced, that when you take the cell phone away from the school setting, that you have great results for kids and for attention. However, in order to get those results, you have to have really strong digital citizenship education and you have to have buy-in from the community. So that's a little more complicated, but many schools I know are investing in figuring out how to handle technology and phones in the school setting, whether it's giving more recommendations to families, maybe being more prescriptive, maybe not allowing them on hand during the school day. All of that is making a difference.
Hmm. When you talk about stronger digital citizenship, is
Yeah.
that within the school setting? Because if they're taking the phones away, then theoretically you're
Yeah.
helping to kind of address that. But that's
So
cold turkey.
Yeah, so I think that if that's operating on the assumption, or schools who do this are operating on the assumption that even if they don't have schools on hand, kids are getting exposed to phones, and even if they aren't right now, they will be later. And so teaching things like how to preserve your reputation and your privacy, how to make safe choices, how not to harm someone else's reputation, talking about things like sextortion or cyberbullying and ethical behavior online.
Hmm.
All of that is a key part, whether or not you have phones in the school for
Hmm.
kids benefiting from those policies.
And so you really unpacked a lot of different types of other programs that schools are focusing on around wellness and well-being. Um, are you seeing this in your own experience, Phyllis? To what degree is everyone on the ground in a school actually engaging in this focus on wellness? Is it a team? Is it across the board? Does the impact depend upon if it's everybody, or is it okay if it's just a team? What seems to be kind of the magic? Is there something that's a magic to doing this well?
I think it has to be part of the curriculum, part of the day. And it can't be, counselors begging English teachers to let them come in for 20 minutes during a period on a Thursday. It has to be something that is recognized as being as equally important as those other parts of their education and their curriculum. So I think there's different levels of comfort with doing this. And I firmly believe that everybody should play to their strengths. I'm not suggesting that everybody needs to throw themselves, wholeheartedly into all wellness all the time. Different educators have different strengths, but on that broad administrative level, what are we expending resources on and devoting time to? I think that's a key part of it. I'm also, it's funny because it's sort of like some of those statistics we talked about earlier. For every advance, there's sort of a step back. And one of the things that I think is really challenging is everybody from kids to parents to teachers has so much more language around mental health now than they used to. And everybody has a computer in their pocket that they can Google things. So kids are self-diagnosing all the time. And there's also a temptation, I think, that's greater than in the past for teachers or even counselors to diagnose students in the school setting. And even though I'm licensed to do that and make a diagnosis in my private practice, it's not appropriate for me to do that in the school setting. And so I think often, even if you're right, we just need a reminder that we have to focus on the specific behaviors we're seeing, whether it's disorganization or disruption or they're chronically late, whatever we're seeing, just being really specific in how we talk about it and
Hmm.
not making the leap to diagnosing a student in a school setting.
Hmm.
So continuing to educate everybody around all of this, including parents. I think I'm seeing far more parent education than I have in the past, and a lot of interest from parents. And I think it's because it's kind of stressful to be human right now for everybody, and emotions are contagious. And so parents don't want to make things worse for their child. They want to be able to support their kid, and they're hungry for tools too. So that's kind of what I'm seeing on the ground. One other nuanced thing that I'll share that I think we could do better at in schools is to focus more on helping kids hold on to the good emotions longer. I think we talk so much about stress and anxiety and depression and suicidal ideation and how to ask for help and who to ask for help, and all of that is incredibly important. But I think as adults in the school setting or as parents, whatever our role happens to be, I think it's really important to be helping kids identify and talk about moments of joy and to just hang on to it as long as possible and make it obvious that we're as interested in hearing about that as we are in hearing when they're struggling.
Okay, I'm just going to say, Phyllis, I could not agree with you more, but do you see any schools actually doing that? Like, how do they go there? Because it really does feel, and I was a high school English teacher, Latin teacher, English department chair, and I always felt like when kids came into school, they were just waiting for the next shoe to drop. Like, where am I going to make a fool of myself, either socially or academically? And my mission was to like help them lighten up and embrace the day and not be afraid of that. But like, I don't feel that's the natural culture. So, are you seeing people do this? Are you seeing schools do this well?
You have to teach it. And this is something that I think we forget to do in all of our lessons. And so being able to not go straight to the worst case scenario, being able to consider less dire outcomes than I'm going to fail or I'm a loser and I'm never going to have friends again is actually something that kids need to learn how to do because we are wired to, as I was talking about earlier, we're wired to remember the negative and that sticks in our long-term memory. And if you have a kid who's walking down the hall and 20 people tell them they like their shirt and one kid is like, oh, you're wearing a green shirt and it's just ambiguous and you don't know what it means. A kid is going to remember that ambiguous comment. That's what's going to stick with them. And so helping them develop the ability to see things more expansively, to have that cognitive flexibility. Some of the ways that I do that are I might have kids, if they come to me and they tell me something terrible has happened, like they're going to fail the test and the teacher hates them because they never call on them, whatever it might be, or they weren't included. And the reason they weren't included is because somebody wants to trash talk them all night. I will say to them, I don't need you to believe the alternate reasons you come up with, but I want you to come up with at least one or two other possibilities. And you have to say they don't have to believe it or they get stuck. It's too hard for them to loosen their thinking. And the
Mm.
idea isn't to talk them out of how they're feeling. In fact, they might be right. Sometimes they're right. It's to get them in the habit of challenging that negativity because they will have a gentler experience just overall if they do that. Another just practical way I might do that is to ask them to come up with a list of at least 5 things they like about themselves. And if they struggle to even do that, can be things that other people have told them that they like about them, or even what their mother or father would say. And then what I tell them is when they find themselves being self-critical, which I think it's often shocking how self-critical kids are. If you were able to get in their head, you would be shocked at how horrible they are to themselves
Mhm.
sometimes, to force themselves in those moments to read the list that they came up with. And again, they don't have to believe them in the moment, but it's all about that cognitive flexibility. So those are some operationalizing ways to teach it, but on a just on an individual to individual basis, if somebody shares something that you can tell they're excited, you see a little smile on their face, follow up with them about it again the next time you see them. Write it down if you have to remember it, but make a big deal and have as big of a reaction to that as you would to them saying something really self-critical or, you know, forecasting a terrible future in some way.
And we have in Intellispark, we have the high five solution, where anyone on the staff can send a positive message to a student if they recognize and they see something, and they can copy the parents if they want to, in an email. It automatically would go to the parents. And we often say to the schools, look, it doesn't need to be that they did great on a test. It could be that they're working hard and they're making gains, but it could be I just love how you support other students. I just love seeing your smile every day. It can be anything that acknowledges that you notice the student. And so I love this. And Linda, I see your point that your principal is wonderful at telling students what they've done well. I just don't think we can underemphasize how important it is to focus on the positive. So I love those the different examples you shared. I know I have so many questions for you, but one I want to ask before we move on is, and all the way, thank you for the comments in the chat as well. Um, how important is this notion of meaningful staff connections, relationship mapping? Is this something that you're seeing a lot, and does it make a difference?
Yes, and I see people doing it in different ways. We've actually done it at my school through Making Caring Common through that program.
Mhm.
And so there's lots of different ways that people can do it. You can even do it in a more informal way in an advisory. But if you do identify somebody who has nobody that they're connecting with, it's really important that somebody be assigned to take them under their wing and show some extra effort. And there can be lots of reasons that kids are not connecting with adults. It could be the kids' social skills. It could be that they're really introverted or shy or lagging in their ability to connect. It could be that they don't know how to take initiative. It could be that something is not right in their life that needs some attention. And depending on the environment you're in, and I'm in an independent school, so typically in an independent school, you will have pretty good results, and everybody will have somebody who they feel they can confide in and trust. But if
Mhm.
you're in a school that's high trust in that way, and there's a lot of connection, and somebody has markedly fewer connections than other people have
Mhm.
listed, that's worth paying attention to as well.
Okay. Okay. And I'm going to make one more plug here for IntelliSpark, something that we launched this year because we had a number of schools that said, "Hey, I love that in your solution, educators can say, oh, I have a relationship with this student," but they wanted to hear it in the student's voice. And so we made it possible for them to push a survey to students where it gives a drop down of the people on staff, and then you can find out, who are the students saying, one or maybe two people. And then there's a filter to see, are there any students who didn't say any stuff? So you can see right from the student's voice if they're saying, no, actually, there's no one that I would go to if I needed support or advice. And then you can, take the action there. And
I
so
love that.
I was particularly eager to hear if this is making a difference because I know we have a lot of schools that are really excited about it.
It makes a difference. And one thing I will say that schools can do that I think helps a lot. Often in a building, you'll have some adults, and it doesn't have to be teachers. It could be front office staff. It could be coaches. It could be anybody who are just really, really good at connecting in a meaningful way to students who remember everybody's name, and a lot of people would put them on that list. And I think something that schools can do to keep everybody's workload a bit more balanced is to actually honor that emotional labor that those teachers are doing and take something else off of their plate, because you're not going to have everybody being equally skilled in that arena. So maybe they don't have to do, bus duty or whatever it might be, because they're the ones who are doing these morning check-ins with the 5 students who have been particularly struggling, but really treating that as important as some of the other labor educators do at school.
An excellent point. And we can see in ours where there are some staff that are selected by 20 kids, and then some staff that have maybe zero or one or two. So thank you for sharing this feedback on what is working. And again, I invite people to put in the chat if there are certain things that they're finding to be very effective as well. Um, okay, so my next question for you is, and I really liked this question when we talked about it, Phyllis, because I think as people are coming kind of sliding into December and feeling like, wow, we've got a lot of stuff going on here. It's just on a call today when they said, oh my gosh, that school is just everything's going off the walls this year. You talked about sort of refreshing our perspective. Um, you know, given that there are some needs, very strong needs amongst these students, how should we look at what it means today to be a happy, healthy kid? Is there a vision that we should, you know, create for what thriving is? Or, how should we define happy, healthy, thriving student?
Yeah. So I think about that a lot because I get a lot of calls in my work from parents who are freaking out because their kid made a mistake. Maybe they cheated, maybe they were caught being mean to somebody, or maybe they cut class or were shoplifting. You can fill in the blank with all kinds of, got in a physical fight. And to me, all of these experiences, we want kids to make these mistakes when they're young, and they're going to. They'll make different ones. Some of them will be better criminals than others and will get caught more often than others. But this is when we want them to be making these mistakes. And I think the reframe is rather than saying, oh, my kid is doing great in every area except I'm really worried about them because of XYZ, to say, yeah, my kid had a panic attack at school, and you know what? They used some of the strategies they were taught, and they also asked for help. And I'm so glad that they were able to be vulnerable in that moment and were able to remember what it is that helps them when they have a panic attack. Or, yeah, my kid was caught cheating, and at first they really resisted taking accountability, and there was a lot of shame involved. And I was worried that not only were they, a bad person, but they weren't even learning from this experience. But actually, when they had a chance to really sit with it for a little bit and talk about it, we were able to have a really good conversation. And I found out what was at the root of the cheating. And now they're getting the support that they need. And we're giving them more supervision so that they're not tempted. But we're glad that this has come to our attention. And so I think the reframe is really expecting kids to have these growth edges, to make these mistakes, to have these challenges, and seeing them as opportunities. And it's just one stop on the road too. It's that long view. It's what we want when we say we want parents to allow their kids to have more independence, or to try taking a train, or to not bring in their school uniform when they forget it. All of those seemingly little things are actually big things. And so, there are definitions for what clinical depression is, clinical anxiety, and there are times when we definitely want to be worrying that our children are not thriving, but it is not because of these one-off or uh, under control challenges that they're experiencing.
Mhm. I think one of the things that you said was, you don't want the first time something goes awry to be when they're 20 years old, they're living on their own, or they're in college, and everything comes crumbling. It's sort of, we need to build up the muscle for how we work through challenges that are not going to be, the end of the world.
Yeah, and I see that especially in my area. I'm in Montgomery County, Maryland. In the public school system, the way grading works is that everything is rounded up. And if you have one grade one semester and one grade another, you get the higher grade. And so I see some of my clients go off to college and get their first B's or C's, and it feels really catastrophic. And of course, it's not catastrophic. It's part of, learning and learning how you learn and all of those things. But if we don't give kids in the K-12 years the opportunity to deal with it's like that Wendy Mogul book from a million years ago, The Blessing of a B minus. If we don't give them the chance to find constructive ways to deal with disappointment or to rally after a setback or to make amends, take accountability, figure out how they need to stay organized, whatever it might be, we're not serving their needs at all in the long run.
Mhm. And so when those little things happen, we should be like, yes, we get to help you through
Yes.
it. And then so when it happens in January, we need to be ready to embrace
Yeah,
it.
and I
And
get it. I'm a parent too. I have three kids, and I know it's really hard to watch your kids struggle, and you can know the right thing to do and still struggle to do it. And that's when we have to, there's something called, temporal distancing. How am I going to feel about this in 5 hours, 5 weeks, 5 months, 5 years? And so I think we have to help kids develop that skill, that perspective, and we have to really ask ourselves, like, what is the greater gift here to relieve their discomfort in this moment,
yeah,
or to help them become the kind of independent, resilient adults that we hope to turn out?
yeah, exactly. The next thing that I want to put up here is something that you shared with me recently. You said that you were asked to come to a school and be on a panel yourself, and the students were leading the panel, and they had a series of questions for you. And I'm going to put those questions up um, on the screen, and hopefully everyone can see it. And I just wanted to put up here these questions that Phyllis was asked to answer, and I would like people to just take a look at these, um, because and Phyllis, just share with me what you thought about the way this came at you, in terms of what it told you about where students are from a mental health perspective. It was a mental health club, right?
It was a mental health club that was doing a symposium for their high school. And there were students on this panel as well. And I was not the only adult on the panel. And so there were students asking the questions you see, and there were students and adults answering the questions. And everybody in the audience were the rest of their classmates. And what it told me is, there's this really passionate group of students who care enough about mental wellness and mental and emotional well-being that they wanted to have this symposium. I think that's huge. And they did an incredible job organizing it. And then they asked these really kind of deep, insightful questions that, I thought reflected a level of sophistication and depth and forward thinking behavior that was really admirable and challenges a lot of the negative rhetoric that we have been hearing about where kids are and what they're capable of, and set negativity bias. I think we need to keep reminding ourselves that they're yes, they make mistakes, and they're really capable of learning a lot and want to learn a lot, and they want to feel good. They want others to feel good. They want to be their best selves. And we have this opportunity again to really help them develop that self-awareness and develop those interpersonal and relational skills that they need to thrive.
Hmm. When you have a group of students who are asking questions like this, I would think they become peer leaders, and but the question is, how much do they feel like they become, you know, amateur therapists? How do you feel about students kind of
Yeah,
leading the
I
mental
think
health charge?
I think the way that this particular school handled it was to have adults involved in the planning of the symposium as well. I think there is a risk involved if kids are planning it 100% among themselves. They might wade into territory. And one other trend that I didn't mention earlier is that I see kids feeling like they can support kids through hard things in ways that maybe even other adults couldn't support them. You might even need a trained, professional to support those students through whatever challenge it is. And so I think we do need to have that adult perspective to remind students and that they can't handle those big problems, to define what a big problem is, and to give them the skills to ask for help for their peers or for themselves. Girls, especially if they have a friend who is struggling and that person's texting them, they have a harder time typically with boundaries because all they've been told is to be, nice and a good friend. And so it's hard for them to maybe
Mm.
get off the phone, even if it's overwhelming to them, even if it involves putting someone else's needs in front of their own at a time when they themselves are struggling. So we have to be teaching those skills as well. And that's why, while I think it's wonderful that these students were organizing the symposium, I also think it's great that the school was including adults in that planning
Yeah.
process.
That's excellent. That's an excellent point about setting boundaries because you could imagine a child who might otherwise be strong suddenly getting pulled into something over their head.
Yes, and sometimes kids who are really interested in mental health have had their own struggles with mental health, and so they
Mhm.
can feel like armchair experts.
Mm.
They do have a pretty good foundational knowledge about the whatever the challenge might be because they've experienced it themselves. And so it's towing that line between being a support and offering sharing your experiences versus overstepping what you as a student can comfortably do, both from your own perspective and also without harming the other student who
Mhm.
might need more specialized care.
Mhm. I'm going to shift a little bit toward something related to this level of organization, but on student communication. You indicated that you had a little bit of information to share around students' ability to communicate. Do we feel that it has declined, that it has stayed the same, or that it has improved? And how has media impacted that, or cell phone use impacted that?
I'm going to share a statistic that I was looking at earlier today. Two-thirds of teens say phones make it easier for youth to pursue interests, be creative, but fewer think it helps peers learn good social skills. And so that kind of sums up that mixed picture about technology from the vantage point of kids. What I'm seeing is that they're struggling in so many ways socially. And all you have to do is watch two seventh graders try to make plans with one another to know that they do not have the basics down and they need a lot of support. And I'm seeing about a 2 year lag or delay in kids' social skills. And one thing that we forget is how that permeates everything. First of all, the social needs are everything, but also you need those social skills to ask for help from a teacher. You need those social skills to be able to communicate to a friend that you need to set that boundary with them. You need social skills to resolve a conflict. You need social skills for just about every aspect to do a group project, to recover when you haven't done well and you need to communicate to somebody that you could use some extra support to maybe study the material differently the next time. So we definitely are seeing a lag. And in the same way that we need to teach perspective taking, I feel really strongly about teaching social skills. As you know, my latest project was creating with a co-founder an app, a web-based app called Social Playbooks. It's socialplaybook.app that allows kids to practice in the comfort of their own home, or you can use it as a tool in a classroom, but to practice social skills. And we've been having kids use it in lots of different ways, including practicing interviewing skills, for a summer job or for to apply to a magnet or an independent high school. So giving them those tools and what is so important and practicing, whether it's online or offline, giving kids opportunities to do role plays and to practice social skills is incredibly important because what happens is you feel that the emotions in your body in the same way that you will if you didn't practice the first time you try out whatever skill that is, setting that boundary, asking someone to sit with you at lunch, approaching a table where you don't know anyone, whatever it might be, or telling someone to stop being, hogging all the work on the group project and taking control. If you practice that in advance, then your body is used to that intensity and you're going to be calmer and you're going to have an easier
Hmm.
time. uh, it's like role play versus real play. So the role play will help you once you're in that real situation.
Hmm. Hmm. Wow. So, more on the app. If you're interested in learning more about that, you'll have Phyllis's information at the end of the discussion. This time has gone incredibly quickly, as always. I want to share just a couple of other things. Phyllis has talked a lot about, um, you know, how we support students. And sometimes there are those who would say, that's not my role. Um, how do we know when to step in and when not to step in as an educator or even as a student, Phyllis? And how does this Venn diagram inform that?
So I think one of the challenges of working in a school is that everyone seems to think we should be able to fix all of kids' problems. And we are up against a lot of other influences. They don't spend all of their time with us. They have their self expectations, they have their peer relationships, they have whatever their cultural background or parental pressure is at home. And that's out of our control. And so I think it's really helpful to take the time to just make a list of the things that are in your control versus the things that you can't control, just as a reminder. And this is something I do with students too. And then there's the sweet spot in the middle, which is actually things that matter to you. And so taking a minute to look at that list of the things you can control and where it intersects with things that matter, that are important to you. And that's where you expend your energy because you can't do everything. And you will start to be really frustrated if you try to do everything or if you don't have realistic expectations of what you can do in terms of making a difference.
And I think this is, again, you mentioned this could be something for students to use and staff to use, and maybe kind of do it as an exercise to kind of help, let some of the pressure off. So I know we are kind of coming very close. I'm going to show these last two pieces. We're going to send you just a couple of slides, but also in students gaining control. What was this activity about, Phyllis?
Yeah. So what you're showing are several different activities that I do with students to help them build some self-awareness and also to help them with executive functioning. And this is one that kids can do on their own. You can do it in your own life too, by the way. All of these are good for adults too. Or this is something they can do at home with a parent. And you would print out two copies, and both the parent and the child come up with a list of what they think goes into a balanced day that's offline, that has nothing to do with technology. And those lists might not be exactly the same. Parent might want the kid to walk the dog. Kid might not think that's critical to a balanced day. And once you have that agreed upon collaborative list created, just suggesting that the student try to check everything off on that list that's offline before they go online. It's a lower conflict way to think about technology too, and also a way to not just be telling them, but having them do some critical thinking as well. That other activity that you put up a minute ago, this is it's the what I want my life to look like pie chart. And what I do is I have students in that pie chart on the left divide up what their life looks like now. What does a typical day look like? There's going to be sleep, there's going to be school, there are non-negotiables. Maybe there's homework, maybe there's time outside or at a sports practice. And then on the right, I have them do it again, recognizing that there are some non-negotiables that have to stay in that pie chart. But beyond that, what would they want it to look like? And then just think about what it is that's different. And is there something they could do to make their life 1 or 2% better? Even just feeling a small sense of agency is so critical for
Hmm.
resilience. And something that I see a lot, especially with teens and even older tweens, is that they've done the same thing forever. Maybe they've been on a travel lacrosse team or they have been in competitive orchestras and their parents have poured resources into this and they're really good at it and they don't like it anymore. And they almost don't even know they don't like it until they stop and pause and think about it. And giving them permission, and this is something we can work with parents on as well, to experiment, to really work on figuring out where their strengths and interests intersect,
Mhm.
and to give them an opportunity to try new things. Because anytime you're saying yes to one thing, you're by definition saying no to something else.
Yeah. Well, and I think all of these are strategies to help students thrive. Again, thriving takes some reflection, perspective, and we want our students to be able to reflect and have perspective just as much as we need to reflect and renew our perspective as well. We are over the top of the hour already. As you all can see, Phyllis is loaded with knowledge and strategies. And so we always are excited to have her share these. I'm going to go right to the very end because we want to be respectful of your time. And just number one, say, Phyllis, thank you so much.
Thank you for
Um,
having me.
really, so many. I think you offer incredible perspective, and I think it'll this set of tools that you've shared and kind of you know um, what's the word I'm looking for? Just the background, the knowledge that you're seeing in the schools that you're working with helps us to reset and think about how important everything that we do is, but also where we need to learn to let go and focus on the positive. Um, Here you can see some of the books that Phyllis has authored. They are fantastic. I cannot say that enough. And also, you can contact her if interested in learning more about her new app on the social playbook, allowing students, parents, and even educators to role play on, how to have interesting conversations that'll give you practice. So, what did you say? Role play versus real play. And then lastly, of course, wanted to share our information. If you wanted to learn more about Intellispark, reach out to us. And I referenced some of our capabilities. There's a lot of capability we have around helping you provide integrated student supports so you can address your students holistically and support them. So thank you for your commentary, everyone. We hope you enjoyed. And we hope you'll come back for more, but we hope you have a wonderfully refreshing, relaxing end of this year and that your new year starts off brilliantly. So thank you so much. Have a wonderful evening and come again. Take care. Thanks, Phyllis.
Thank you.